From Social Prosperity Partners, this is Community Catalyst. Across America's nearly 90,000 local governments, from cities and towns to counties and school districts, leaders are doing the work of building stronger communities. Here, they share practical lessons for navigating complexity, earning trust, and helping communities move forward together. I'm your host, Matt Lehrman.
I spent years standing in front of city councils and county governments, telling them my opinion. So I say to people today, I lost power getting on city council because instead of being a community voice, I became one vote.
Joining me today is Liz Campos, who has represented District 1 on the Ventura, California City Council since 2022. Liz came to public office through a background in community advocacy and has become a passionate voice on issues including housing, environmental justice, government accountability, and the well-being of some of her community's most vulnerable residents. I'm looking forward to exploring her journey into public service, the relationship between advocacy and governing, and some of the experiences that have shaped her perspective as a local leader. Liz Campos, welcome to Community Catalysts.
Thank you, Matt. I'm very happy to have a conversation with you.
I'm really thrilled to talk to you. Liz, before we talk about your own leadership journey, let's talk about Ventura a little bit. For listeners who may never have visited, tell us something about the community you serve. What should we know?
Ventura is a very beautiful city along the central coast of California. All the young people like to say it's a surfer's town. Those of us who are older and have watched Ventura's growth know that it's a city that was well grounded in art and performance art for years and years. So it grew around the artist community.
Are you an artist yourself? Is that what brought you to Ventura?
No, I came to Ventura to teach. I left college at San Francisco State and came here to teach. When I arrived after phone interviews that hired me, I didn't get the job because I'm in a wheelchair. And that was at a time when we still had the ugly laws available to us.
I'm sorry, the ugly laws?
Yes, until around 1992, when the ADA was signed, there were laws in every state that said if a person looks offensive or doesn't speak right or stumbles when they walk, they need to be hidden away. They can be banned from going into restaurants or public facilities, or attending public events. That was the law in the United States.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. So I came with a master's degree in chemistry, one in literature, a California junior college teaching credential, an online teaching credential, and could not get hired because I'm in a wheelchair.
That seems impossible.
Believe me, it's not impossible. It's why there's a big fight in the disability community now to protect us from the recent activity in Washington, where the Olmstead ruling from the Supreme Court during President George W. Bush's era, when he signed into law a lot of support for the disabled community, our current president wants to get rid of it. He wants to cancel it.
This would have a devastating effect on you and other people who are disabled, wouldn't it?
It's frightening for young adults who are just coming into their own and have been through education, and they're being told they can't live in the community, that money can't be spent to house them anywhere except in institutions. It's a frightening prospect.
Forgive me for being blunt. Is being disabled, is having to advocate as a disabled person, is that at the root of how you became a community advocate in the first place?
No, actually, I didn't become disabled till I was in college, and we had an accident in a chemistry lab. And then later I was assaulted by someone who perceived me as weak. They left me for dead, but I'm alive today. What made me an advocate was in high school, actually in Phoenix, Arizona, I was the president of the science club, and we had two scientists from UCLA come and visit their former friend who'd been in school with them, who was my biology teacher. They did an assembly with us describing the greenhouse effect and how it may affect the world. And they described what's happening in the United States today with climate and all the problems we're experiencing, the wildfires, the winds, the ocean rising. And they said that their model expected it to be 250 years away. That was 50 years ago. But that day, hearing them speak, I became a climate activist. I spoke at many city councils. I spoke at the state government in Arizona, in Massachusetts and California. I used to speak all the time to my city councils. I never expected to lead until I got here and was denied a job because of a wheelchair. Then I had to turn my advocacy towards disability issues.
I take it your advocacy has gone now even beyond environmental advocacy and disability advocacy.
Yes, I actually am a city council member because I care for my community so much.
Tell me about that. Tell me about the transition. When did you decide that being a community activist and an advocate wasn't enough on its own, that you needed to run for city council? What was that all about?
It never occurred to me to run for city council until the person from my district, who was not just our council rep, but was the mayor at the time, explained to me that she was not happy with all the confrontation and the arguments. But she had seen me speaking in the rallies to shut down the gas compressor in my neighborhood and felt that I was capable and encouraged me to run so that she could not have to run. And then there was a woman who's been an advocate for seniors for years in Ventura. People used to fear her coming to their councils and speaking because she spoke so well. She and I were both diagnosed with cancer on the same day in the same hospital, stage 4 cancer. And we would meet every Saturday morning with a group of people to talk politics and human rights and different things. And she turned to me one day and said, "You're not going to die. You need to run for city council." She died 7 months later. I completely defeated my cancer.
And you decided to run.
I followed their encouragement and ran for city council. And I won.
Tell me about that transition. What was it like to run for city council? I take it you're in a wheelchair on a permanent basis, right? You had to campaign from a wheelchair.
Yes, during COVID. So during COVID, at the beginning of COVID, I had been speaking at city council meetings here for years. But when COVID shut us down, we were in the middle of the battle to shut down a gas compressor that sits less than 70 yards from the front of an elementary school. It's very dangerous. It's a school that experiences 4 or 5 cases of leukemia every year in a child population. It doesn't need to be there. It needs to go away. So I was battling that as an environmental battle. I became the chair of the community council for that community at that time. But everything was shut down. So we had to do the community meetings on Zoom, but invited people to come if they wanted to into the room. So we formed a hybrid system of community council meetings. And I campaigned publicly in the parks and at the rallies. So we never shut down my neighborhood. We kept at it. In fact, the taxes from my neighborhood supported a lot of the city during COVID. Everybody in the neighborhood knew me because I'm a natural teacher. And I was tutoring the kids there for 30 years. So if you look at the statistics of the voters who voted for me during that campaign, most of them were age 18 to 30. It wasn't all the old ladies that voted for an old lady, it was kids.
So you were elected in 2022. It's 2026 now. Is the compressor still there in front of that school?
It is right now, although because of the advocacy and the very hard work of Tomas Rebecki, a dear friend who is a national advocate with Food and Water Watch, a national organization. He organized groups to speak about that compressor. And because of all of that going to every one of their meetings, they wanted to know if it was really that close. So one of the commissioners came to our district, to my district where it sits, visited the compressor, and then came and sat with us in the schoolyard. And when we first started our meeting with her, she had a horrified look on her face. And when I asked her if she needed water, if she was okay, she said, "I'm okay. I never really believed you. But I stood next to that compressor, smelling the leaking gas and hearing the noise, and the school bell rang. And when the kids came out for recess, I could hear their conversations." So she understood how close the compressor is.
I'm wondering, do you consider this 4 years on to be an example of progress, that you're making progress, or are you just frustrated that it's taken so long to accomplish something important when there are kids there, throughout the school year?
That's the horrifying thing, is that because it's not a wealthy neighborhood, those kids have to go to school there. They can't travel all over town to go to school. They don't have parents or butlers to drive them to another school. So they have to attend that school. And they come in healthy and they leave unable to play sports because their asthma is so bad. That breaks my heart. But I have hope that we're going to win in the end of it, and the next generation will be healthy again. I feel strongly. And I don't give up.
Yeah, it sounds like this is where an advocate is really important, someone who's going to be tenacious and not let go of a difficult but important situation.
Exactly. Tenacious is my favorite word.
Liz, there's another part of your story that I think might be important for listeners to understand. You've had experience in your own life that has given you a very different perspective on housing insecurity. And I want to say different, I mean different from most elected officials. Could I ask you to share some of that story?
It is very interesting. When I was campaigning, my landlord, whose politics are opposite mine, told me I had to leave where I was living. California had a law during COVID that you couldn't be evicted. And we have a law in the state that you can't be evicted without just cause. So when he first started asking me to leave, he gave me a letter talking about what a great tenant I am and how I always pay my rent on time to give to prospective landlords. But during COVID, there was no housing to move to, especially for a person in a wheelchair. So eventually he sold the house. So I was forced to move out. But with nowhere to go, the community rallied and bought me a van to live in. And I had to move into the van to be out of his house when escrow closed. I've been living in that van for 3 years. But what it's done for me is give me an understanding of homeless people and what they suffer every day and what their challenges are. It's not easy to live in a vehicle and then come and show up for a 12-hour city council meeting. It's a challenge. But life is a challenge. No one ever said it's going to be easy.
Do you consider yourself homeless? Does living out of a van mean that you are homeless?
There's different levels of homelessness. So some very generous people have let me live on their property for these 3.5 years. So I had a van that I'm living in, which is big. It's not a little van. It's like a paratransit van that carries people in wheelchairs around. So it has a ramp for me to get in and out of. And it's big. It's about 18 feet long. So there's room. And they let me park it in the back of their driveway. So it's on private property and I have a permanent address. That's the hardest thing for most people who are homeless, who have to search every night for somewhere to sleep and never know if they're going to be robbed in the night by other homeless people who are unscrupulous or awakened by police and told to move on. I don't consider myself homeless in that way. It's a challenge to not have a permanent location, but I'm okay. I have a roof over my head at night. It's tiny. It's like a tiny home.
Liz, I would imagine that most people would find the process of looking for stable housing to be an overwhelming full-time priority. How have you been able to continually serve on the city council while at the same time navigating that kind of a challenge?
When I ran for election, I promised my community I would fight for them. And so whatever my personal challenges are, I'm in the battle to protect my community 100%. So that comes first.
Tell me more about that. What you're saying is that the advocacy is so important to you that you're willing to endure even this. Tell everyone what that heart of an advocate is.
I don't know if you remember last year in June, there were ICE raids on 2 agricultural locations in Ventura County. In fact, the first person that was killed by an ICE officer in the United States occurred in Ventura County. His family lives in my neighborhood. Our community stepped up. Our rapid response network stepped up immediately to fight ICE and to protect the community. I didn't think that was enough. So I had to bring a program to the city, a policy to the city, that we were going to stand by these people and protect them. We call that the community autonomy and equity, community autonomy, rights, and equity. That law asks the police to have no cooperative effort with ICE. If ICE calls them, they'll stay away. If ICE calls them and says, oh, we're being attacked in the community, we need protection, the police will show up, but they won't turn on the members of my community. They will stand between them to protect them. So that's part of the policy that was written. And all of this is vaguely written into California state law. So we also have protections for trans people and the LGBT community who are at risk of actions from our federal government at any minute. In fact, there's a lot that's happened this year to oppress the younger people, younger members of that community, who are, I believe, the most at risk in the United States for death by suicide of anyone. That's horrifying for me, and I think I'm morally obligated to do everything I can to protect them. This week, our president's going after people with disabilities. I don't know what he would say about me because I'm an elected official. I still function. I just happen to sit in a wheelchair. We're living in a time when there's a pushback against community engagement. I hate seeing it on our council when our mayor reduces people's time from 3 minutes to 1. I fight. I don't always win, but I think we need our community. That's the reason we're here, is for the community. And so I want to make sure they feel that they can come anytime and speak to council and be engaged.
This is to be the heart of an advocate.
Well, that's it. If I'm an elected official, I have a responsibility to the people who elected me. So in order for me to be responsible, I have to hear them. If they come to a city council meeting to speak about some issue that's affecting them, and I'm not willing to listen, I'm not a leader. I don't deserve their votes that elected me. My community loves me. I have no doubt about that.
There is a saying about, finding a unicorn. So you are, among other things, I'm sure, a homeless, disabled city council member. There can't be many people in the state of California or even in the country who meet that criteria. Is that a fair statement, do you think?
That's a fair statement.
I think you have a statistic in California, don't you?
There's one in Covina who is blind, and I'm the only one in a wheelchair that's permanently in the wheelchair.
In the whole state of California?
In the state of California.
That's incredible.
It is what it is. This is why when I'm speaking to people with disabilities, with children, I like to speak to the children in the schools and tell them always be positive and talk about yourself in a positive way. Don't say, oh, I'm disabled by CP. Say, CP is how I live my life. Don't say I have the disability of autism. It's not a disability. It's just the way you live. You can be anything you want to be or accomplish anything if you believe in yourself.
I want to ask you about the transition. I think it was a transition for being a community activist and an advocate, and then ultimately taking the oath of office and becoming a city council member for the first time. Everyone who I talk to who takes a position on a city council carries expectations about how government works and what they hope to accomplish. Once you took your seat on the city council, what surprised you most about the difference between being someone who advocates from a community perspective versus the reality of governing itself?
Well, one thing is, a city council is like a board of directors in a company. We're responsible to take care of the budget and the money and how things function, but we're not connected to the employees. We have two employees, a city attorney and a city manager. And so it's not a hands-on kind of job like a lot of leaders expect. A lot of leadership in the community comes very hands-on. And it can be a surprise that we're taught to not touch many things, to keep our nose out of that business. And so it takes time to learn, because city managers are very authoritative. So it takes time for council members to learn, I'm his boss. I don't take orders from him. He may explain something to me that I respond to it in my way as the authority. That's a very hard thing. I came into a building that's a historical building, and my city manager at that time thought that if I needed some access feature adjusted, I wasn't qualified to be here. So I was treated very poorly by the city management the first 6 months I was here. At one point, I argued with him, and he said to me, "You're going to be gone soon." And 3 months later, he was gone. Not through any effort of mine. It just happened, the circumstance. But sitting in a wheelchair with a spinal cord injury doesn't give you a lot of mobility. It took me 3 years to get my city council dais wheelchair accessible for me. There was a time early on when I was sitting down on the floor with a handheld microphone talking to my fellow council members. Things that need to be changed, you have to be patient to learn the way to get the change done. That was hard for me being patient about, but they finally got to it.
Patience and advocacy they are oil and water.
Yeah. Patience alone is very difficult when you're talking about government. Government moves very slowly.
So you learned the lesson that when I do orientations for new council members, it's always lesson number 1, which is there is a line of responsibility in which the electeds own the questions that begin with what, like what are the long-term objectives of our community, right. But the staff under a city manager own the questions of how. And the how questions range from, what photocopier lease we're going to enter into, to what equipment we need to fight fires in our city or all the rest of it. But that the council doesn't get to play in the what questions. They don't get to do the detail work. But in theory, the staff doesn't get to tell the city council what the long-term objectives should be for the community. Am I right in hearing you that was an important lesson for you to learn early?
Early, yes. And I quickly built a good relationship with the fire chief and the police department, the leadership in the police department, and our public works department. I have yet to build that relationship with community development. That's a hard one for me.
Yeah, there's the flip side of that, which is also understanding that when you serve on a city council, you are one of, is it 7 votes on your council, right? There is no individual power or authority. There is only the collective of what the majority says is the policy of the council.
That's right. And that's a very challenging thing. I spent years standing in front of city councils and county governments telling them my opinion. So I say to people today, I lost power getting on city council because instead of being a community voice, I became one vote. And that's very challenging to get past and to a place where you still feel you have some power.
And what have you come to learn now that you've been on council for 4 years? Have you actually lost power, or have you just discovered that you have to exercise it in a different way?
Yeah, actually, I don't think I really lost power because there are council members who respect my voice. And I learned that in order to wield the power we have to communicate with each other calmly and respectfully. But on the dais, because of California's Brown Act, we can't meet outside and talk about things. So we have to be able to say clearly what we mean on the dais to convince other council members that our position is correct.
Literally a seat at the table. Having a seat at the table matters. And even
Yes.
though you've lost some ability to advocate to the exclusion of everything else, what you actually get is the position at the table to say, I get to advocate for this amidst everything else.
Exactly.
Liz, I want to go a little bit deeper on that one because I find this fascinating about local leadership. A lot of local leaders begin as advocates for something. They saw a need and they thought, I can step up. And someone said, yeah, you could do that. And the next thing you know, you're on council, you're the mayor. So people get elected because they care about a cause or an issue or a group of people. And that's great to inspire someone to step forward and serve. But once elected, once they take the oath of office, you're entrusted with a responsibility for the entire community. And so I'm curious to ask you, because you embrace the idea of being an advocate, but you've also accepted a responsibility for serving the entire city. Are there moments when those two roles have pulled you in different directions? And how do you navigate those moments?
That's a bigger challenge because city council is a role that really is nonpartisan. But there's a lot of partisan division in different neighborhoods or different areas. And some of that affects the opinions that are brought to us about what's going on in a city. So learning to listen to every side and evaluate it sincerely with an open mind is very important. And then communicating with the council members who represent those parts of the city who are fighting what your part of the city needs. There's a battle. There's a lot of push for the resources.
Liz, earlier we were talking about your own experiences, and what I gathered from it is that it's given you not just an understanding of being disabled and of people experiencing homelessness, it really gave you an empathy for it that it's hard to come by without having had that experience. But I am curious whether your work in public service has also expanded your empathy, perhaps in unexpected directions. Have there been people or perspectives that you've come to understand more deeply since taking office? And is there an example of that you might share?
People who are in positions of leadership in other agencies that are controlled by politicians. For example, the County Board of Supervisors oversees the hospitals, and it oversees animal services, and many different areas where the leader has to answer to them and may be very different from their political perspective that they have, may have an understanding of animal services and leadership in that area that's very different, and they have to fight for every resource they get. I think it's important for us to recognize anything that we're responsible for as a service that requires a very high level of education or experience in leadership. We need to be able to listen to carefully and respect the decisions of. And that's hard for some politicians to let go of control of. You know, I'm the boss, we're making this decision. Sorry that you're struggling. But, you know, our hospitals are really suffering right now because of the loss of federal money, getting the distribution of county money is very critical, and I'm watching them suffer. But then I can apply that to the businesses because the economy's adjusted and there's so much cost for people. They're not spending money frivolously. So a lot of businesses locally are suffering. And not having ever been a business person, I have to step back and really listen carefully and understand what their suffering is and what their hardships are.
Imagine someone listening to this interview who cares deeply about an issue in their community, and they're considering running for office. What have you learned about the difference between fighting for a cause and accepting responsibility for a community that you would impart to them even before they decide to run? What would you tell them?
Get to know the whole community and get to know your fellow council members while you have an ability to speak with them. Because once you're on the council, there's laws that can restrict how much you can get together. Get to know them and know what they feel about that issue that's so important to you. Because then you'll know what you have to do if it's the right thing to do.
Liz, early in this conversation, we talked about how your advocacy was recently, spurred on by changes that you saw out of the federal government. And you were talking about the threats that exist to many people within our population, from immigration to disabled and more. I am curious to ask you, despite all of that, what gives you hope for the future of our country, for the future of our democracy? What is the thing that keeps you doing this?
When people get together to stand up for what they believe is right, I know that the world will be okay. I went to a rally that we call No Kings Rallies in May in Ventura, California, at about a 15-acre yard around our government center, our county government center, where there were 12,000 people. We were smashed together, so many of us came, to say we believe in our Constitution and we're not letting it go. The Constitution can be looked at many different ways, but ultimately I believe it's for the good of all the people.
You believe in the Constitution?
Yeah.
That's a great takeaway. Liz Campos, thank you so much for this conversation. I just appreciate your being open and candid, and I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And remind your listeners to be kind to people with disabilities.
I think you just did. My thanks again to Liz Campos, Ventura City, California Council member representing District 1. One thing I appreciate about this conversation is the reminder that many leaders are drawn into public service because of something they've experienced personally. Sometimes it's a challenge they faced, or a problem they've witnessed, or a community they care deeply about. Those experiences can become powerful sources of commitment, empathy, and purpose. And I think that leaves all of us with a worthwhile question to consider in our own leadership. How have your own experiences shaped the issues you care most about? And how do you balance those experiences with an oath of office that calls on you to serve the broader interests of your entire community? Hey, if this conversation sparked an insight, a question, or a perspective you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. Reach me at 602-688-2724 and leave a message. And if you'd be open to talking about some of the hard-earned lessons from your own leadership journey, click the guest link in the show notes. Community Catalysts is edited by Nick, Living the Dream Tantillo. I'm Matt Lehrman of Social Prosperity Partners. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with another Community Catalyst.